Everybody, welcome back to Jersey First TV, a special edition tonight, a candidate forum that we are hosting. I am Elizabeth Nader with my co-host Jolly Taymorian. Welcome everyone to Jersey First TV. Now, this special edition is to highlight specifically the candidates running for Senate in District 21. So welcome Mayor Joseph Signorello. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here. Thank you.
Let me explain to the audience how we are doing this tonight. We are doing two separate interviews that we posted together. They're both similar in length and similar question categories from both sides of the aisle. So we hope to give you a full view here. The questions that we're going to ask have been inspired by the recent gubernatorial debates, and they have not been shared with the candidates prior to the interview. So the way this is going to run is the candidate will have 2 minutes to do the intro, and then we will move into each of the 6 questions, 3-minute answers with a potential for a follow-up question and a 1-minute answer to that. And then Mayor, at the end, we will let you close with a 2-minute response. If at any time you hear that beeping noise, please wrap it up as quickly as you can. If for whatever reason you don't hear it, you'll see me waving my hand and ask you, then you would wrap it up. So, Mayor, first thing I want to do is read your bio before we get into the questions. So, everyone, this is Mayor Joe Signorelli. He is the Democratic nominee running against John Bramnick for the 21st Legislative District seat, the Senate seat. Joe has served as the mayor of his hometown, Roselle Park, since 2018, a graduate of Union County Magnet High School. He then went on to complete his bachelor's degree in business administration from Seton Hall University. In his professional career, he works in venture capital to help seed and grow early stage startups. All right, Mayor, if you would please go ahead and give everyone your 2-minute intro.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. I'm excited this is a really important election, and any venue that I can have to reach out to voters, especially across the aisle, I think it's really important. So I appreciate the opportunity. I'm a little bit bummed. I would love to have had a debate. I don't know why we couldn't set one up, but such is life. But I think it's great to compare the two candidates in the forum you guys are. So I'm excited to, highlight those differences. We've done some really good work in Roselle Park. So I'm a Democrat, but I'm a Democrat who really hates taxes. And I'm also a Democrat who works in the private sector. I've spent most of my life in financial services and consulting. I think that the folks, especially in LD-21 in New Jersey, while you understand that taxes are high in New Jersey, we want the best bang for our buck. And that's how I've run Roselle Park. We've had some of the tightest budgets in the last 25 years under my administration. We've gotten back to basics, investing in things like roads and parks and rehabilitating the downtown. And I think that that's a lot about what this race is about, sort of getting back to basics, getting folks to a place where they feel like they're getting the best bang for their tax dollars. And I do quite frankly think that ideologically the district shifted. I think we are a little bit more left-leaning when it comes to social issues, but it's an affluent district, and it's an affluent district who understands the bang for their buck. And I think it's about time we start getting that in LD-21. And I think we're better positioned to do that with sort of a fiscally savvy Democrat than we've had from the current delegation. And I'm super happy to talk about that and a myriad of other issues, as I'm sure we'll get into tonight. So.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. All right, we're going to move into question number 1. And Jolly, I'm going to let you take that. Just a reminder, Mayor, these are 3-minute responses. And if she asks a follow-up, it's a 1-minute response. So Jolly, go ahead, please.
Okay. So, Mayor, the Reproductive Freedom Act, which is currently being considered in the Senate, would codify laws pertaining to family planning and reproductive rights that are already on the books in New Jersey and put in place safeguards against future attacks on reproductive rights, such as the bill that was passed in Texas, the Heartbeat Bill.
Yep.
And provide lower cost and more available family planning and reproductive health services, such as cancer screenings, to all women.
Yep.
If brought to the floor, would you support this bill?
Yes. I believe that, so first off, I'm a Democrat. which does make it, growing up in a Catholic household, right? Obviously, there are certain beliefs within, at least the American Catholic community that are in disagreement with this. But, I firmly believe in the separation of church and state. And I also firmly believe in a woman's right to choose as what she wants to do. I think it's quite frankly disappointing that we are in a situation where we need to codify it and protect ourselves and protect the women of New Jersey. I do quite frankly feel like Roe v. Wade is in danger. There have been attacks on it countrywide. And I think given the makeup of the Supreme Court, although I have to say it's been surprisingly, although it has from an appointment perspective, sort of a Republican skew. I think in the past, they've been fairly down the middle. I do think with the current makeup, Roe v. Wade's in jeopardy. And I think we need to do our best to protect the women's right in the state of New Jersey. I'm fully supportive of it.
All right, great. Okay,
Any
let's
follow-up question, Jolly?
No, I don't.
Okay. All right. So, Mayor, we're going to ask you about the COVID response.
Yep.
More than 8,500 COVID deaths were in the long-term care settings, about 31% of all fatalities. It's been 19 months since the pandemic started. Governor Murphy has pledged many times to do a thorough review of what happened in long-term care. This review, of course, hasn't happened yet. Will you support an investigation into these deaths and hold the individuals responsible who made the decisions that resulted in all of those fatalities?
Yeah. So, I first off want to say, with regards to the pandemic, I think we were all operating in, it feels like ages ago, but the first months of that felt particularly new and scary, right? And I want to say, I think, although I publicly talked about some of the points of issues I've had with Governor Murphy's response, I think on the whole, in an environment, especially on the onset when we weren't getting a ton of federal support and love, I think overall, part of the popularity of Phil Murphy this year is people feel like he steered us through the pandemic in a pretty darn good way. Looking around the country, I think that holds true, although I think there are things that could have been done better. And that does not mean I take this lightly, right? So obviously, I would say that these things are worth investigating. It's something that the governor himself, although it hasn't happened yet, has committed to looking into. And it's something that, quite frankly, if elected senator, I think we have a lot of long-term care facilities in our region. And I think we owe it to the people of Roselle Park, the people of LD-21. I got to get my mayor hat off. The people of LD-21 and the people of the state of New Jersey to make sure that that commitment's made, right? So if the governor committed to doing a follow-up on this and there was something untoward that was done, people need to be held responsible and there needs to be accountability. So I support the governor in that. And, I would, as a senator, look to make sure that he stands by that commitment.
Okay, so I have to ask you as a follow-up, Mayor, you did mention that you felt that Governor Murphy handled the pandemic well, but yet New Jersey has the highest per capita number of deaths in the world. So how is that possible to reconcile the number of deaths we had per capita with the choices that he made?
Yeah, I mean, we also have the highest population density in the country. And we're also, the backyard of the city of New York, which is an international hub, right? I would say that without some of the severe, and I say severe in a positive way, mitigation efforts, I think it could have been much worse. I think that I know it sounds silly to say, but in many areas of this state, we're physically on top of each other, right? We are a densely populated area. And also, I think in other areas, there's, areas of the state that weren't as compliant as they should have been in holding to a lot of these lockdowns and rules and regulations. So, I want to say it's death by 1,000 cuts, but I just think we are, from a regional perspective, in a very, very difficult place. And I think the death toll could have been much worse had we, followed the same guidelines as some of the other states have done.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Jolly, please, next.
Okay, so I am going to switch it up a little bit here and ask you about Governor Murphy's recent direction to the Department of Environmental Protection to enact a set of sweeping reforms called the Protecting Against Climate Threats, or the PACT, to reduce emissions and adapt to climate change.
Yep.
And New Jersey is the first state in the nation to pursue such a comprehensive and aggressive suite of climate change regulations. The stated goal is 100% clean energy by 2050. Your campaign website states one of your priorities under your infrastructure as clean energy. And so I'm wondering, do you support the plan and to get there, and how will we pay for it?
Yeah. So, broadly, I support going as fast and as quickly as we can to, getting to, as early as we can with things like the Paris Climate Accord. I think that the climate change is upon us, right? Like, it's no longer some far off nebulous thing. We saw with Hurricane Ida that, I keep hearing and I keep knocking on doors and everybody says, oh, this is a 100-year storm. This is a 100-year storm. They say, Mayor, I've had 300-year storms in the last 10 years, right? So they're clearly happening more and more often. I think that, from a perspective of what we're doing, I think we can redirect a lot of the funds that we're using in more climate efficient ways, right? So I would argue that public transit is something that we're already doubling down on, that we just need to. So people make a boogeyman out of the new Green Deal, which I also think there's a lot of pork in that proposed, package or set of solutions. I am no AOC Democrat. I am a very, very moderate Democrat. But a large part of that is relying on public transport, getting us from A to B, right, and taking cars off the road. I think that what we're doing with electric busing is really important. I know it doesn't sound like super exotic and cool like 2 new trains to Manhattan does, but as we have development within the state of New Jersey, we have more and more traffic issues, and I think we can kill a couple birds with one stone by making sure that we have more efficient methodology, not just to get from New York, Cranford to New York, but to get from Cranford to Basking Ridge, right, where Verizon headquarters are. So I think that interstate connectivity is super important to just getting cars off the road and helping reduce traffic. I also think it makes a more equitable New Jersey, right? So, there are people that can't afford a car, and I think that helps out. So I think doubling down on those efforts, specifically around transit, helps revitalize NJ Transit, but also gets us closer to, a more climate efficient world too. And I think that I would like to do a study on NJ Transit specifically to see where we can double down and refocus those efforts, right? We're going to talk about taxes later, but it's my hypothesis that, within a lot of these departments, there are inefficiencies. And what we've done in Roselle Park is we've cut programs that don't work and we've put more funding into programs that do work. And I think that that's the way we need to look at things within the state. So when you ask about how to pay for it, I think we need to look at, at an individual level, each department, right? And figure out which bits of those aren't working, have a real hard discussion about whether or not it continues to make that, continue down that path. And then with theoretical saves, push those into, things that make our state better, like, new bus routes or new train routes. And this also has it has a knock-on effect of being more climate friendly. Sorry. I hope that answered the question.
It did. I do have a little follow-up. In terms of, I understand public transportation, the need to expand cleaner and more efficient means of public transportation, not just to New York, as you stated, but throughout the state. But what about the push for more charging stations and, electric vehicles? I mean, how so many rebates are expiring, through people sort of adopting this. What would you suggest to sort of remove the financial, impediment for a lot of families who aren't in the upper income brackets to be able to afford to adopt these new cleaner vehicles?
Yeah. So real quick, I think as far as infrastructure goes for electric charging, I think we're going to quickly reach a tipping point, and Tesla's already doing that, where it's actually a profit maker versus a loss leader, right? So people actually use those, and they get money back, obviously, for the charging, right? And I think we need to double down on the private sector to help provide a lot of these gaps versus the state of New Jersey just doling out incentives, right? And I think that would be a large sticking point for me because it shouldn't purely come out of the taxpayer. I would say, look, again, I'm a special flavor of Democrat. I think the free market decides a lot of these things, right? And I know right now a Tesla looks like a luxury item, but the fact of the matter is the technology is becoming ubiquitous, and electric cars are becoming cheaper and cheaper. We see this, there's a slew of them coming out. But I do think it's imperative to make sure that our infrastructure is ready. But I do think we need to lean on the private sector a little bit more and get out of the way of the private sector to make sure that that infrastructure is there. I mean, sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, great. Thank you, Mayor.
Yep.
All right, so we'll move on to taxes and spending.
Yep.
Over the past year, New Jersey state revenues have been helped by the $4 billion in emergency borrowing and a portion of $6 billion in COVID relief funding from the federal government. These, of course, are one-time injections of revenue not likely to come again. Governor Murphy has pledged not to raise taxes. Are you with him in that promise? If so, where will the money come from next year to meet the current spending in the budget?
Yeah, I mean, I think, so again, I'm putting my private sector hat on, right? So if you're looking at the valuation of a company, you look at a valuation of a company based on their run rate revenue, not one-offs. And I think we can't keep putting bandages on a broken leg. I as senator, I'm going to be steadfast in, if we're going to keep expanding programs, we need to start realizing savings, right? And again, I'm going to use the term death by 1,000 cuts here again. Taxes in this state are high, I think, because of a multitude of reasons, right? We have over 500 municipalities in the state of New Jersey, compared to, the one that Jack Ciattarelli loves comparing us to. California has 300, right? I think we need to start realizing economies of scale, like very, very quickly. I love the borough of Roselle Park. I love the look and feel of having a small town. But we are 14,000 people with our own Department of Public Works, our own garbage pickup, our own school department, our own school system. I think we really need to quickly look into double down on regionalization efforts where it makes sense. And I think there's going to be some tough conversations around that. I think that at a local level, that will really help. But there's a knock-on solution to that as well, right? So when we get state aid, or when municipalities get state aid, I think it's more efficient to give it to a regional service versus, onesie, twosie, redsie, bluesie patches of services within a municipality. So, I mean, I think the long story short is I'm not in favor of short-term patches. I think we have a spend crisis. Crisis is a little bit too hard. I think we have a spend problem in the state of New Jersey, but I don't think a lot of it's nefarious, right? I think we have a lot of small towns with their own fiefdoms, right? And we have a state infrastructure to support all these small towns, and that yields complexity, and complexity yields costs. So I think it really boils down to a lot of that. And I don't think we're going to fix it overnight. I don't think we're going to be able to fix it in the next 2 to 3 years. I think this is a long-term problem. And any politician who's saying we're going to cut property taxes next year, it's a lie. And it's very nearly impossible with the way that our state is structured. We need long-term solutions to long-term problems that we've had. So I don't know if I went off the rails there a little bit. I went specifically on property taxes. I know we're going to talk about that later, but does that answer your question?
Sure, that's fine. We will come back to property taxes.
Yep.
Jolly, I'll let you go ahead with your question.
Okay, and this is about vaccine mandates and masking mandates.
Yep.
So vaccines have been shown repeatedly to safely and effectively prevent serious illness, hospitalization, and even death.
Yep.
Some on the right and, to be honest, the left.
Oh, there's lefties too.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. Have grown increasingly hostile to the notion of mandatory vaccines, despite vaccine mandates being in place in this country since the mid-1850s.
Yeah.
and have parlayed the fight against COVID-19 into a political one. The latest frontier in the great American defense of freedom of liberty, where others argue that rather than compromise civil liberties, vaccine mandates actually further them by protecting the most vulnerable amongst us. So where do you stand on vaccine mandates and masking mandates, and how, if you are for them, how would you suggest implementing them and winning over those who are perhaps not into the idea of a vaccine mandate?
Yeah, I mean, I think the sad reality is, you know, back in the day when a vaccine was created, it was a miracle of science, and everybody was just like, "Yep, give me the jab, let's do this." You know, I think it's really unfortunate. I understand people's apprehension about putting something in their body, but I trust our very, very well-educated and strong, you know, scientists nationwide, right? Like I do. And when something's deemed safe to put in my body, if it's going to help save grandpa, I'm going to do it. And I think conspiracy theories and, you know, a lot of fringe groups have run amok on social media. And I think it's unfortunate because I just, you know, it's been part of the fabric of our society for the longest time, right? Like we've cured diseases that don't exist anymore effectively in the United States because people get vaccinated when they're kids. So with regards to mask mandates, I'm sorry, it's not that hard to throw a mask on. It's just not, right? I know it's annoying. I know it's uncomfortable. It's just not that hard to throw a mask on. And even if people feel like it is overly invasive or infringing on their rights, you know, I'm a big believer of your right to swing your arms ends at my nose. And if a mask even, you know, even isn't even as effective as the experts say it is, if it helps reduce the risk of a deadly disease, put the darn mask on. Simple as that, right? And when it comes to vaccines, you know, I think private companies are well within their rights to mandate vaccines, right? Like that is what the private sector does. And we've done it in the past without controversy. You know, restaurants are able to implement requirements to enter their restaurant because they're private businesses. You know, I think we need to look at things like, I worked in Europe for a while, so I try to look around globally at what works and what doesn't. And I know it was really unpopular in the city of New York, but what really worked in France to make the vaccination population ramp up real quick, you weren't allowed to enter a restaurant unless you were vaccinated, right? And I know that's a little bit drastic at this point, but you know, I think you hit people or get people's attention when it's something that they care about, and entering, you know, a public space or a restaurant to go out to eat something that people care about. But I also think that until we have herd immunity, it's something that we need to be cognizant of. And, you know, pandemics are scary. Being mayor through this, I realize that it's scary, and the accountability that falls on you as a mayor is terrifying. But I think there's a lot of things, and getting vaccinated included them. There's things we have to do for the greater good, and getting a vaccine is one of them to help save lives.
Okay, so now my follow-up to that is, what would you say to those who accuse you then of being, since you are pro-choice and also pro-mandate, of being a hypocrite?
Oh, I knew this question was coming. So don't count this towards my minute. All right, I'm ready to answer now. There is a distinct difference between a choice with my individual body, right, and what I want to do with it, and my family planning, and my health, quite frankly, right? I mean, a lot of these issues, when it comes to abortion, comes down to, not a lot of them, but enough of them come down to the health of the mother. That is a very, very individual choice versus spreading a virus, which is highly contagious, which affects other people, right? So I go back to it. Your ability to swing your fist ends where my face starts, right? You choosing not to get a vaccine, which, you know, I mean, there has been no statewide mandate, right? That's a personal choice that can negatively impact me and my family, and that's where the line is drawn.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the last question, back to property taxes.
Yes.
All
I
right,
love
we
talking
need to
about these.
circle back to property taxes, Mayor.
Yep.
We have every election promises from both parties, but the majority party has been the Democrats for quite some time,
Yep.
to lower property taxes. Property taxes continue to go up.
Yep.
Continue to go up in this state, highest in the nation.
Yep.
It's time for a serious solution. Can you give us specifics on what you would do, what you would support to finally address one of the most pressing issues in our state?
100%. I'm so happy to give specifics on this because I live and breathe this as a mayor. So I would not, as senator, support any expansion of, I wouldn't say any expansion, but expansion that is additive to the budget and additive to municipal budgets without a requirement for some sort of cost savings, right? So I would contend, although it has been a majority Dem state for a long time, the taxes on a municipal level in the borough of Roselle Park saw their biggest spike during the Christie administration when funding was cut to the schools. And I know hard decisions need to be made, but we've started to give funding back at adequate levels to the schools. Our property taxes have not gone down. So I think as we continue to fund the coffers of school systems, I think that we need to have some level of mandates around fiscal responsibility and budget controls, right? So I have no idea why, if we're making school budgets whole again from the Christie administration when it was not whole, why school budgets are still going up or school taxes are still getting increased. And I would contend, if there is that macro level issue, once again, we need to look at sharing services, right? So there's bits and bobs that I don't agree with in Steve Sweeney's path to progress, but I do agree with a lot of the regionalization efforts. Roselle Park is a perfect example. We are a square mile town, 1.2 square miles, right? We could easily just be a ward in Cranford for their DPW to service, right? And that means I don't have to pay for a DPW superintendent. I don't have to pay for potentially as many workers. And oh, by the way, when we purchase things, we get more economies of scale, right? The problem is, as mayor, there's no incentive to forge these shared services agreements because, people like home rule, people are scared of sharing, people are scared of the other, right? Do I want to work with Roselle Park? Do I not want to? I think this is where the state needs to come in and draw a hard line with non-controversial pieces of I think public safety is a much more difficult conversation, but I think when I first got elected, I was asking why I can't do a regional RFP for my garbage disposal services. It's apparently not possible, right? But I guarantee you, if I went out to bid with 3 other towns in my area to get garbage disposal services, I would get better bang for the buck. And oh, by the way, the borough of Roselle Park would never know if it was a joint bid or a separate bid. So I think we really need to double down on regional services. The last thing, which I think is a little bit right pocket, left pocket, but I do think it's immediate relief on property taxpayers. I'm going to try and say this as quick as possible because I'm running up on 3 minutes. So my offices are based in Pennsylvania, right? And they don't put as much burden on the actual property tax bill. They also do things like county-wide taxes based on payroll.
It's okay. Finish your sentence, please.
Okay. Yeah. They also do countywide taxes based on payroll, right? Now, one would argue that okay, well, you're just taxing me in a different place, but that's not correct, right? So the borough of Roselle Park has about 3,000 homes, right? Which means the property taxes from the county taxes go to the property owner, right? Which means potentially, right, there's a disproportionate county tax on the actual property owner. I think that if you were to change the way we tax things like, county taxes potentially, and you could even keep them revenue neutral, right? Not up or down, you are potentially sharing the burden of taxes more equitably, right? Because that means not just property owners in the county of Union are paying taxes, but also the renters, right? Because they live there and they pay their fair share of property taxes. And that could be a meaningful change for a lot of people. So it's definitely one of the more controversial ones and outside of the box, but I think something worth exploring.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. All
Sorry.
right. No, thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
That was our last question. So we would like you now, if you would please, to take 2 minutes for your closing to let the voters know whatever else you want them to know about you as we wrap up this interview.
Yeah. So what you see tonight is what you get as Senator Signorello, potentially. I think people are tired of the traditional politician. You may not agree with everything I've said tonight. You might think I'm wacky on a couple things, right? And you might say, hey, Mayor Signorello, I really want to keep my garbage disposal specific to my town, right? Like, I'm just picking out one example. You may not like my view on vaccines, but you're going to get the truth from me, and you're going to get somebody who's a damn hard worker. I don't want to, throw shots across the other side, but I can tell you that I think the people of LD-21 expect a productive state senator. And we've had on one side somebody who's talked a lot about solving these issues, but hasn't seen much traction. I know there's a lot of politicians that talk a lot about these issues and haven't seen much traction. But I would argue that the district wants to see somebody who believes in what they believe, in almost a libertarian way, and let people have their individual freedoms. But I do think people are very focused on the financial stability of the state of New Jersey. And I think we need more pragmatic state senators like the aforementioned Steve Sweeney, who are worried about property taxes and who are worried about, reining these costs in. I think we need to solve that problem from within the Democratic Party. And I certainly think that I'm the right person to do it for LD-21. And I think that there's just a 20-year track record of not getting those things done that Republican or Democrat needs to be accounted for. So with that said, I'm an honest guy, and you'll probably get an honest state senator, again, whether you like it or not. And at the end of the day, I'm gonna work my tail off for you guys, just like I have for the borough of Roselle Park. So. Thanks for having me, guys.
Great. Thank you so much, Mayor.
Yeah.
And thank you, Jolly, as always, for participating. To our audience, thank you for watching. Please share this interview. It will be side by side with Assemblyman John Bramnick's as well, so you can compare and contrast the candidates. So especially those in District 21, share, inform everyone that you can. And most importantly, guys, vote.
Yes.
Early voting starts October 23rd. Election day is November 2nd, so it is upon us. So again, thank you to both of you. Thank you to the audience, and to everybody. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, guys.